The sky over Seoul turned dark at noon. Han Jae-min stood among thousands of people, all looking up at the massive ship that blocked the sun. The ship was bigger than any building he had ever seen. It hung in the air without making a sound, casting a shadow over the entire city. The aliens had come. Jae-min was 29 years old. He worked as an engineer at a small company that made machines for factories. He was not special. He was not a soldier or a scientist or a hero. He was just a man who went to work every day and sent money home to his younger sister, Yuna. But today, everything changed. The Arivan Empire had sent their ships to Earth. They came not to invade, but to recruit. Every 50 years, they held something called the Proving Grounds. Species from across the galaxy would send their best warriors, their smartest minds, their strongest champions. Those who won would earn great rewards for their people. Technology, protection, a place among the stars. Humanity had never been invited before. The Aravani considered humans to be a lesser species, weak, emotional, primitive. But this year, they needed more contestants. So they came to Earth. Jae-min watched as a platform lowered from the ship. On it stood the most beautiful being he had ever seen. She had silver-white skin that seemed to glow softly. Her hair was long and pale, moving slowly as if underwater. Her eyes were violet, deep and cold like frozen stars. She wore armor that looked like liquid metal, and she stood with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Her name was Valaria. She was the High Commander of the Arivan Empire. People of Earth, her voice echoed across the city without any machines. It simply filled the air. We offer you a chance. Send us your champions. If they survive the Proving Grounds, your species will be rewarded beyond your dreams. If they fail, you lose nothing but a few lives. The way she said it made Jae-min's stomach turn. A few lives. As if human lives meant nothing. The selection process began within hours. Military leaders from around the world gathered their best soldiers. Scientists offered their geniuses. Athletes, fighters, survivors of impossible situations, all were brought forward. Commander Daeho was in charge of Korea's selection. He was an old soldier with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had fought in 3 wars and survived them all. Now he had the impossible task of choosing who would represent humanity. Jae-min was not supposed to be there. He came only because his company had been hired to help set up the technical equipment for the selection process. He stood in the back, watching as candidate after candidate stepped forward. The Aravani examined each one with strange devices. They measured strength, speed, intelligence, and something they called genetic potential. Most humans were dismissed immediately. Too weak, they said. Too slow. Too limited. Valaria walked among the candidates herself. She looked at each human the way someone might look at insects. Her face showed no emotion, no interest, no hope for any of them. Then her eyes found Jae-min. He froze. She was looking right at him, those violet eyes cutting through the crowd. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. She was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. He felt like a mouse being watched by a hawk. She walked toward him. The crowd parted. Jae-min wanted to run, but his legs would not move. Valaria stopped in front of him. She was taller than him by a head. Up close, he could see that her skin was not just silver. It had patterns in it, like circuits or veins of light. "You," she said. "What is your function?" I am an engineer," Jae-min managed to say. "I fix machines." She tilted her head slightly. One of her officers scanned him with a device. "Genetic potential, minimal," the officer reported. "Physical capability, below average. Psionic sensitivity, none. This one is unsuitable." Valaria looked at the results, then back at Jae-min. Something flickered in her eyes. Perhaps amusement, perhaps disappointment. "Return to your place, human," she said coldly. "You are not what we seek." She turned and walked away. Jamin felt his face burn with shame. He did not know why he felt rejected. He had not wanted to be chosen. But the way she dismissed him, as if he was worth less than dirt, made something hot and angry grow in his chest. The selection continued for 3 more days. In the end, the Auravani chose 12 humans from around the world. Korea had 2, a special forces soldier and a famous martial artist. Both were strong, fast, and genetically superior. Jamin went back to his normal life. Or he tried to. On the night before the chosen candidates were supposed to leave, his phone rang. It was Commander Daeho. "Han Jamin," the old soldier said. "I need you to come to the military base. Now." "Why?" Jamin asked, confused. "One of our candidates collapsed. Some kind of rare disease. He cannot go. And we need a replacement." Jamin's heart stopped. "You cannot mean me. You were scanned. You are in the system. You are the only available backup who has been cleared by the Auravani. But they said I was unsuitable." "Unsuitable is still cleared. Come now." "That is an order." Jamin wanted to refuse. He thought of Yuna, his sister, who needed him. He thought of his small apartment, his simple job, his quiet life. He was not a hero. He was not a warrior. But he also thought of the way Velaria had looked at him. The way she had dismissed him without a second thought. The way she had said that human lives meant nothing. He went to the base. When he arrived, Velaria was there. She looked at him with those cold violet eyes, and he saw recognition flash across her face. "The engineer," she said. "You are the replacement?" "Yes," Jamin said. He forced himself to stand straight and meet her gaze. Velaria studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to her officers. "Adequate filler," she announced. "He will do. Load him with the others." Adequate filler. The words burned in Jamin's ears as he was led onto the transport ship. He was not a champion. He was not a warrior. He was just filler, something to fill an empty space dot as the ship rose into the sky. Jamin looked out the window at Earth, growing smaller below. He thought of Yuna. He had called her before leaving, promising he would come back. She had cried. He had tried not to. Behind him, he heard Velaria speaking to her lieutenant. "The human will not last the first trial," she said. "They never do." Jamin clenched his fists. His hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was anger. Pure, burning anger. He made a silent promise to himself. He would survive. He would prove them wrong. He would show this alien commander that humans were not weak, not worthless, not just filler. He would make her remember his name. The station was larger than any city Jamin had ever seen. It floated in space like a metal moon, spinning slowly among the stars. Through the windows of the transport ship, he could see thousands of smaller vessels coming and going like bees around a hive. The proving grounds. When the ship docked, Jamin and the other human candidates were led through long corridors made of dark metal. Strange lights flickered on the walls. The air smelled different here, cleaner, but also colder. Without the familiar sense of Earth, they entered a massive hall where contestants from other species had already gathered. Jamin stopped walking and stared. He had known there would be aliens. He had prepared himself for it. But nothing could have prepared him for what he saw. Towering reptilian creatures stood in one corner, their scales green and black, their eyes like burning coals. They were easily 3 meters tall, with claws that looked like they could cut through steel. One of them looked at Jamin and made a sound that might have been laughter in another area. Insectoid beings clicked and buzzed to each other. They had 4 arms, compound eyes and mandibles that never stopped moving. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that gleamed under the lights. They were beings made of what looked like living crystal. There were creatures with too many limbs, too many eyes, too many teeth. There were some that seemed to be made of pure light, and others that looked like shadows given form. And then there were the humans. 12 of them, including Jaemin, small, soft, fragile. The reptilian creatures pointed at the humans and spoke in their harsh language. Jaemin did not need a translator to understand they were mocking them. A human woman moved to stand beside Jaemin. She was about his age, with short black hair and determined eyes. Her name was Kira, and she was from Bizan. She had been a rescue diver before being selected. "They think we are food," Kira said quietly, looking at the reptilians. "Let them think what they want," Jaemin replied. "Thoughts do not kill. Actions do." Kira smiled slightly. "I like you, engineer. Try not to die too quickly." Before Jaemin could respond, a loud horn echoed through the hall. All the contestants fell silent. On a platform high above them, Velaria appeared. She looked like a goddess standing among mortals. Her silver skin caught the light, and her violet eyes swept across the crowd like a queen examining her subjects. "Welcome to the proving grounds," she announced. "You represent the finest your species have to offer. Over the next 10 days, you will face 3 trials. Each trial will test different aspects of your worth, strength, survival, strategy. Only those who pass all 3 will earn the reward." She paused, and her eyes seemed to find Jaemin in the crowd. "Many of you will not survive. That is expected. That is the point. The weak will fall. The strong will rise. This is the way of the universe." The first trial was announced. The Labyrinth of Echoes. The contestants were taken to a massive structure that looked like a temple made of black stone. Inside, they were told, was a maze. But it was not an ordinary maze. The labyrinth used technology to reach into the mind. It would find your deepest fears, your worst memories, your darkest thoughts. It would amplify them and turn them against you. The only way to pass was to reach the center of the maze. Within 6 hours, many species had advantages. The psionic beings could shield their minds. The reptilians had been trained since birth to suppress emotion. The crystal beings claimed to feel nothing at all. Humans had no such protections. When the trial began, Jaemin stepped into the labyrinth alone. Each contestant entered through a different door. There would be no help from others. The moment the door closed behind him, the world changed. The walls of the maze began to whisper. At first, the voices were soft, almost gentle. But slowly, they grew louder. "You are nothing," the voices said. "You were never good enough. You will die here, alone, forgotten." Jaemin kept walking. He had heard worse from his own mind during the hard years after his parents died. The maze shifted. Suddenly, he was not in a stone corridor anymore. He was back in his old apartment, the one where he had lived as a child. The walls were cracked. The lights were broken. And in the corner, he saw his mother, lying still on the floor. "You could not save her," a voice said. "You were too weak, too useless. Just like you are now." Jaemin's heart pounded. He knew this was not real. He knew the maze was playing tricks on him. But the pain felt real. The guilt felt real. He fell to his knees. The weight of the memories pressed down on him like a physical force. Other contestants were already failing. Jaemin could hear screams echoing through the maze. Beings far stronger than him, breaking under the pressure of their own minds. He thought of giving up. It would be so easy to just stop, to let the darkness take him. Then he thought of Yuan, his little sister, who had smiled at him even during the worst times. who had held his hand at their parents' funeral, who had told him again and again that she believed in him. J. Dashman began to hum. It was a song Yuna used to sing when she was scared, a simple children's song about a bird flying over mountains. His voice was shaky, broken by tears, but he did not stop. The visions tried to overwhelm him. They showed him failure after failure, rejection after rejection. They showed him Valaria's cold eyes and her cruel words. Adequate filler. But Jamin kept humming. He kept walking. One step at a time. He did not fight the fear. He did not try to suppress it. He simply accepted it, carried it with him, and moved forward anyway. Hours passed. Or maybe it was minutes. Time had no meaning in this place. When Jamin finally stumbled out of the maze's center, he collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. His face was wet with tears. His body was shaking. But he was alive. He looked up and saw that only a handful of contestants had made it. The mighty reptilians, the psionic beings, the crystal creatures. Many of their numbers had fallen. Screams still echoed from deep within the maze. A screen above the exit showed the rankings. Jamin found his name. Second place. He had finished second, behind only a psionic being who could literally block mental attacks. The humans who had survived gathered around him, their faces showing disbelief. Even Kira, who had barely made it out herself, stared at him with wide eyes. "How?" she asked. "How did you do that?" Jamin did not know how to answer. He had not done anything special. He had just refused to stop. High above, on the observation deck, Valaria watched the results with an expression no one had ever seen on her face before. Interest. The engineer, her lieutenant, said with surprise, "He finished second. That is unexpected." Valaria said nothing for a long moment. She simply stared at the exhausted human on the screen below, the one she had dismissed as worthless. "Interesting," she finally whispered. When Jamin looked up at the observation deck, he saw her watching him. Their eyes met across the vast distance. This time, she did not look away first. The planet had no name, only a number. It was covered in thick jungle, with trees taller than skyscrapers and vines as thick as a man's body. The sky was green, and two suns hung low on the horizon, casting strange double shadows on everything. This was the location of the second trial, survival extraction. The remaining contestants stood on a platform floating high above the jungle. Many had died in the labyrinth of echoes. Of the original 12 humans, only 5 remained. Jamin was one of them. Kiro was another. Valaria's voice came through speakers built into their wristbands. "You will be dropped into the jungle," she explained. "You must survive for 72 hours and reach the extraction point on the other side of the continent. You may form alliances. You may betray each other. You may do whatever is necessary to survive." She paused. "But know this, only those who reach the extraction point will continue. The jungle is filled with predators, poisons, and traps. Many of you will die. That is expected." The platform began to descend. Contestants jumped off at different points, scattering across the jungle. Jamin landed hard, rolling through thick undergrowth. He quickly got to his feet and looked around. The jungle was alive with sounds, strange birds calling, insects buzzing, and something large moving through the trees nearby. A hand grabbed his shoulder. He spun around, ready to fight. It was Kira. "Easy, engineer," she said. "I am not your enemy. We should stick together. Humans against everyone else." Jamin nodded. It made sense. Alone, they were weak. Together, they had a chance. They began moving through the jungle, heading toward the extraction point marked on their wristbands. The other 3 humans had landed far away. There was no way to find them. The first day was hard. The jungle seemed to fight them at every step. Plants with thorns that cut through clothing, pools of water that burned like acid, insects that tried to burrow into their skin, but they survived. On the second day, they found signs of other contestants. Bodies of an insectoid being, torn apart by some predator. Equipment from a crystal creature, abandoned and broken. The jungle was doing the work of elimination. That night, they made camp in a hollow tree. Kira took first watch while Jaemin tried to sleep. But sleep would not come. Why did you sign up for this? Kira asked quietly. J-Min opened his eyes. I did not sign up. I was a replacement. Someone else got sick. Kira laughed softly. Bad luck or good luck? I am still trying to figure that out. I volunteered, Kira said. I wanted to prove that humans are not weak, that we deserve a place among the stars. She paused. Also, my family is poor. The reward money would change their lives. Jaemin understood. He thought of Yuna, struggling to pay for school while he was gone. We will both make it, he said. We will get the reward and go home. Kira smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. One of us will, at least. On the third day, they were attacked. It happened without warning. One moment, they were walking through a clearing. The next, energy blasts were flying past their heads. The reptilian creatures had found them. 3 of the massive aliens emerged from the jungle, their weapons raised. Their leader, the largest of them, pointed at Jaemin. The human who finished second, the reptilian said in broken common language. You embarrassed my people in the first trial. Now you die. Jaemin and Kira ran. They crashed through the jungle, branches tearing at their faces and arms. The reptilians were faster, stronger, but the thick vegetation slowed them down. The humans were smaller, able to slip through gaps the aliens could not. They ran for what felt like hours. Finally, they reached a narrow ravine with a river at the bottom. A fallen tree formed a bridge to the other side. Go! Kira shouted, pushing Jaemin forward. He ran across the log. Behind him, he heard the reptilians crashing through the trees. J-Men reached the other side and turned to wait for Kira. She was halfway across when the energy blast hit her. It struck her in the back, and she stumbled. For a moment, she seemed to hang in the air. Then she fell forward, landing hard on the other side of the ravine. Kira. Jaemin rushed to her side. The wound was bad. The blast had burned through her back, and blood was spreading across the ground beneath her. Her face was pale, and her breathing was shallow. Behind them, the reptilians had reached the ravine. But the log bridge had broken when Kira fell, and the gap was too wide for them to jump. They roared in frustration, but could not follow. For now, they were safe. J-Men held Kira in his arms. Stay with me. We are close to the extraction point. Just hold on. Kira coughed blood. We both know I am not making it. Do not say that, Jaemin. Her hand grabbed his arm with surprising strength. Listen to me. You have to show them. Show the whole galaxy what humans are made of. Promise me. Tears were running down Jaemin's face. I promise. Kira smiled. It was a peaceful smile, like someone who had finished a long journey. Tell my family I love them, she whispered. Tell them I was brave. You are brave. You are the bravest person I have ever known. Kira's eyes slowly closed. Her grip on his arm loosened. She was gone. J-Men sat there for a long time, holding her body and crying. The sounds of the jungle continued around him, uncaring. Life and death happened here every moment. One more death meant nothing to this world, but it meant everything to him. When the sun began to set, Jaemin made a decision. He lifted Kira's body onto his back. She was not heavy, but the jungle was thick, and he was exhausted. It did not matter. He would not leave her here. He walked through the night, Carrying his fallen friend Dot, by the morning of the fourth day, he reached the extraction point. He was the last one to arrive. His clothes were torn, his body was covered in cuts and bruises, and he could barely stand, but he was alive. And he had brought Kira with him. The other contestants stared at him in confusion. A crystal being tilted its head. "Why did you carry the dead one?" it asked. "She is useless now?" Dead weight. Jamin laid Kira's body gently on the ground. He looked at the crystal being with eyes that burned with something cold and hard. "She is not dead weight," he said. "She is my friend. And we do not abandon our friends. Not ever. Not even in death." The crystal being had no response to that. On her ship, high above the planet, Valeria watched the footage from the extraction point. A lieutenant stood beside her, equally silent. He carried her body for 20 kilometers. The lieutenant finally said, "Through hostile jungle with predators everywhere. It makes no logical sense." Valeria did not respond. She watched as Jamin knelt beside Kira's body, his shoulders shaking with grief. For the first time in centuries, she felt something stir in her chest. Something she had long thought dead. She did not know what to call it, but she could not look away. That night, the humans held a small ceremony for Kira. Jamin spoke about her bravery, her sacrifice, her dream of proving humanity's worth. When he finished, he made one final promise. "I will not let your death be meaningless," he said to the stars. "I will win this. For you. For all of us." Somewhere above, watching through her ship's cameras, Valeria heard every word, and something in her cold heart cracked, just a little. The ship was old. Older than any of the species competing in the proving grounds. It floated in the darkness of space like a dead whale, its hull covered in scars from ancient battles. Lights flickered inside, on and off, like the dying heartbeat of a metal giant. They called it the ghost ship. J-men stood in the transport vessel with the other remaining contestants, staring at the ancient warship through the window. Only 6 competitors were left. 2 crystal beings, 2 reptilians, a psionic being with gray skin and no eyes, and 1 human. Him.V. Ilaria's voice came through the speakers. "This is the 3rd and final trial before the championship round," she announced. The ghost ship was once the flagship of a civilization that died 10,000 years ago. It is filled with automated defenses, security systems, and traps designed to kill anything that moves. She paused to let the weight of her words sink in. "Your mission is simple. Reach the bridge at the center of the ship. The first one to take the captain's chair wins this trial. All others will be eliminated from the competition." Eliminated. Jamin knew what that meant. Dead. The 6 contestants were dropped at different entry points around the ship. Jamin entered through a cargo bay on the lower levels. The moment his feet touched the metal floor, the door sealed behind him. He was alone in the darkness. The ship groaned around him, metal twisting and settling. Red emergency lights flickered on, casting bloody shadows on the walls. Somewhere in the distance, he heard the sound of weapons firing. One of the other contestants had already triggered a trap. J-men moved carefully, staying low and quiet. He had no natural advantages here. The crystal beings were nearly indestructible. The reptilians were fast and strong. The psionic being could sense danger before it happened. What did Jamin have? An engineering degree and a talent for fixing broken machines. It would have to be enough. As he moved through the ship, he studied the technology around him. The automated defenses were old but deadly. Gun turrets that tracked movement, force fields that blocked corridors, robots that patrolled the hallways with weapons built into their arms. But old technology had weaknesses. Old systems had patterns, and patterns could be exploited. J-men found a maintenance panel and pried it open. Inside were wires and circuits, covered in dust, but still functional. He traced the connections, following the logic of the ancient engineers who had built this ship. Within an hour, he had learned the defense system's language. He could not shut it down, not from here, but he could redirect it. He could tell it that certain areas were more dangerous than others. He could make it think there were intruders where there were none. He went to work. In another part of the ship, the two reptilians moved together, their weapons drawn. They were confident. They had been bred for combat, trained since birth to kill. This ship was just another battlefield. Then the turrets turned on them. The guns that had been pointing at the hallways suddenly swiveled and opened fire. The reptilians dove for cover, confused. They had not triggered any traps. They had been careful, but the ship's systems had decided they were the priority targets. One reptilian fell, cut down by a dozen energy blasts. The other roared in rage and charged forward, trying to reach the guns. But more turrets emerged from the walls, and soon he too lay still on the floor. J-Min watched from a hidden alcove, then moved on. The crystal beings were harder to eliminate. Their bodies could absorb most energy weapons, making the turrets nearly useless against them. But J-Min had noticed something during the first trial. The crystal beings were sensitive to certain frequencies of sound. He found the ship's communication system and adjusted the frequencies. Then he broadcast a signal throughout the ship, a high-pitched tone that was barely noticeable to other species. To the crystal beings, it was agony. He heard their screams echoing through the corridors. The sound was like glass breaking, sharp and painful. They tried to find the source, tried to stop it, but J-Min had routed the signal through a dozen different speakers across the ship. One crystal being collapsed, its body cracking under the sonic assault. The other managed to find an escape pod and ejected from the ship, choosing to forfeit rather than die. Now only J-Min and the psionic being remained. The psionic was named Thalros. He was ancient, hundreds of years old, and his mental powers were legendary. He could read minds, predict movements, and sense danger from any direction. Against such an opponent, J-Min should have had no chance, but Thalros had a weakness that J-Min had noticed during the previous trials. His powers worked by reading thoughts and emotions. If there were no thoughts to read, he was blind. J-Min found a quiet corner and sat down. He closed his eyes. He emptied his mind of all thoughts, all plans, all fears. He thought of nothing. He became nothing, just as his mother had taught him during meditation when he was a child. Thalros moved through the ship, searching for the last opponent. His mental senses reached out, probing every corner, every shadow. He felt nothing. The human had vanished. Impossible, he thought. No being can hide from me. But J-Min was not hiding. He was simply empty. When Thalros passed the alcove where J-Min waited, he sensed nothing. No fear, no anger, no plans, just silence. J-Min moved like a shadow, following the psionic from a safe distance. He waited for the right moment. It came when Thalros reached the bridge. The psionic stepped through the final door, his senses finally relaxing. He had won. The human was nowhere to be found. The captain's chair was right there, waiting for him. He never saw the metal pipe that swung at his head. J-Min hit him hard, putting all his strength into the blow. Thalros staggered, his mental defenses shattered by the sudden attack. Before he could recover, J-Min hit him again and again. The psionic fell to the floor, unconscious but alive. J-Min stood over him, breathing hard. His arms were shaking. His whole body was shaking, but he was still standing. He walked to the captain's chair and sat down. The moment he did, lights came on throughout the bridge. A holographic display appeared, showing his face and the words, "Trial complete, winner." J-Min leaned back in the chair and closed his eyes. For a moment, he let himself feel the victory. Kira would have been proud. An hour later, a shuttle docked with the ghost ship. The door to the bridge opened, and Valeria walked in. She looked at the unconscious psionic on the floor. She looked at the displays showing the fates of the other contestants. She looked at the human sitting in the captain's chair, covered in dust and sweat and looking like he had been through a war. "You should be dead," she said. J-Min opened his eyes and looked at her. Despite everything, he managed a tired smile. "I get that a lot," he replied. Valeria studied him for a long moment. Her violet eyes showed something that had never been there before. Respect. "You used the ship's own systems against the others," she said. "You turned their strengths into weaknesses. You fought with your mind when your body was outmatched." "That is what humans do," Jamin said. "We adapt. We survive. We find a way." Valeria stepped closer. For the first time, she did not look at him like he was an insect. She looked at him like he was an equal. "Perhaps I underestimated your kind," she said softly. "Perhaps you did." Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Something neither of them had expected. Something that would change everything. The message came at midnight. Ship time. J-Min was lying in his small room on the station, staring at the ceiling and thinking of home. The medical team had treated his wounds, and his body was healing. But his mind was still racing, replaying every moment of the trials. His wristband beeped. A message appeared on the small screen. "Commander Valeria requests your presence. Private quarters. Deck 7. Jamin stared at the message for a long time. A private meeting with the High Commander? This could not be good. Perhaps she had found something wrong with his victory. Perhaps he was about to be disqualified. Perhaps he was about to be killed. But he had not come this far to hide in his room. He got dressed and walked through the empty corridors of the station. At this hour, most beings were asleep. The halls were quiet, lit only by soft blue lights that made everything look like a dream. When he reached Deck 7, 2 guards stood outside a large door. They looked at him with curiosity, but did not stop him. The door opened automatically. He stepped inside. Valaria's quarters were nothing like he had expected. He had imagined cold metal and harsh lights, like the rest of the station. Instead, he found himself in a room that felt almost alive. Plants grew along the walls, strange flowers from distant worlds, glowing softly in the dim light. Water flowed from a fountain in the corner, creating a gentle sound that filled the space. The ceiling was transparent, showing the stars outside in all their glory. And there, standing by the window, was Valeria. She had changed out of her armor. She wore a simple robe of white fabric that flowed around her like water. Without the metal and weapons, she looked smaller, softer, almost vulnerable. She turned to face him. "You came," she said. "You asked." A small smile touched her lips. Most beings would have been too afraid. "I am afraid," Jamin admitted. "But fear has never stopped me before." Valeria gestured to a seat near the window. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." Jamin sat down carefully, still unsure what to expect. Valeria poured 2 glasses of a glowing liquid and handed one to him. "It is wine," she explained, "from my home world. It will not harm you." He took the glass and sipped carefully. The taste was sweet and strange, like nothing he had ever experienced. It was not unpleasant. Valeria sat across from him, holding her own glass but not drinking. She seemed to be gathering her thoughts. "You are wondering why I asked you here," she said finally. The thought had crossed my mind. She was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "The proving grounds are not what you think they are." Jamin frowned. "What do you mean?" "The galaxy believes this is a competition for glory and rewards. A way for lesser species to earn the favor of the Empire." She paused. That is a lie. She stood up and walked to the window, her back to him. My people, the Arivan, are dying. Jamin said nothing, waiting for her to continue. We have lived for 1,000,000 years. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have achieved perfection in every way. Strength, intelligence, longevity. But that perfection is our curse. She turned to look at him. We have stopped evolving. Our genetics have become stagnant. We cannot adapt. We cannot change. Every generation, we become weaker. She set down her glass. In another 10,000 years, the Arivan Empire will be extinct. Jamin felt the weight of her words. And the proving grounds? A search, Valeria said. For millennia, we have been looking for species that possess what we have lost. The ability to adapt, to overcome, to survive against impossible odds. She looked at him with those violet eyes. We need new blood, new genetics, a species that can merge with ours and save us from extinction. Jamin finally understood. You are not looking for warriors. You are looking for survivors. Yes, and the rewards? The technology, the protection? Real, Valeria said. Whatever species proves worthy will receive everything we promised. But they will also receive something more. A bond with the Arivan Empire that goes beyond alliance. A true merging of our peoples. Jamin stood up slowly. Why are you telling me this? Valeria stepped closer to him. They were only a meter apart now. I have watched the proving grounds for 500 years, she said. I have seen champions from 100 species. The strongest warriors. The smartest minds. The most perfect genetic specimens. She paused. They all failed. Every single one. She reached out and touched his face gently. Her skin was cool and smooth, like polished stone. Then I saw you. Yenin's heart was beating hard. I am nobody. You said it yourself. I was just filler. Adequate filler. I was wrong. The words seemed to cause her pain. I have never been wrong before. But I was wrong about you. She pulled her hand back and looked away. In the labyrinth, I watched you carry your fear like a burden and keep walking. In the jungle, I watched you carry your dead friend and refuse to leave her. On the ghost ship, I watched you defeat enemies that should have destroyed you. Her voice was barely a whisper now. I have never seen anything like you. I was just surviving, Jamin said. No. Valeria turned back to him. You were doing something more. Something my people have forgotten how to do. You were hoping. Even when there was no reason to hope, you refused to give up. She was very close now. He could smell her scent, something like flowers and starlight. I chose others before you, she admitted. In the selection on your planet, I chose the strongest and the fastest. I dismissed you without a second thought. But they broke in the first trial. They gave up. They died. Her eyes met his. And you kept standing. Jamin did not know what to say. He was just an engineer from Seoul, a nobody who had stumbled into this competition by accident. And now the most powerful woman in the galaxy was looking at him like he was the answer to everything. What happens now? He asked. Now you face the final trial, Valeria said. The arena of ascension. You will fight our greatest champion, a warrior who has never been defeated. If you win, you will earn the reward for your species. She paused. And something more if you want it. What is that? She leaned close and spoke softly into his ear. Me. Jamin felt his breath catch in his throat. Valeria pulled back and looked at him with an expression he could not fully read. Longing? Hope? Fear? I have waited 500 years for someone worthy, she said. I am tired of waiting. Jamin thought of everything he had been through. The dismissal. The trials. The death of Kira. The pain and the blood and the endless fighting. He thought of home. of Yuna, of Earth. And he thought of this strange, beautiful alien who had started by despising him and now looked at him like he was the only thing in the universe that mattered. I will win, he said finally. And then we will see what happens next. Velaria smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. Then I will be watching, she said. I will always be watching. When Jamin left her quarters and walked back through the empty corridors, his mind was spinning with everything he had learned. But one thing was clear. Tomorrow, he would face the greatest battle of his life. And for the first time since this journey began, he was not fighting just to survive. He was fighting for something more. The Arena of Ascension was the largest structure Jamin had ever seen. It was a coliseum built in space, floating among the stars like a monument to power. 100,000 beings filled the seats, creatures from every corner of the galaxy. They had come to watch the final trial. They had come to see Blood. J-Min stood in the entrance tunnel, looking out at the arena floor. The sand was white, almost glowing under the bright lights. The walls were 30 meters high, covered in viewing screens that would show every moment of the fight to the audience. Above, and waiting in the center, was his opponent. His name was Vorn. He was the champion of the Arivan Empire, undefeated in 10,000 battles. He stood 3 meters tall, his body a perfect machine of muscle and metal. Unlike Velaria, whose beauty was ethereal, Vorn was terrifying. His silver skin was covered in scars from ancient battles. His eyes were not violet but red, burning like dying stars. He looked at Jamin like a wolf looks at a rabbit. The crowd roared as Jamin walked onto the arena floor. Some cheered. Most laughed. A human against the greatest warrior in the galaxy? This would not be a fight. It would be an execution. But Jamin walked forward anyway. Somewhere in the crowd, in a private viewing box, Velaria watched. Her hands gripped the railing so hard that the metal bent beneath her fingers. Her lieutenant stood beside her. "Commander, perhaps we should intervene. The human will surely die." "No," Velaria said, her voice tight. "He would never forgive me if I took this from him. He must have the chance to prove himself. And if he fails?" Velaria did not answer. She could not. In the arena, Jamin and Vorn faced each other across the white sand. "Little human," Vorn said, his voice like thunder. "I have killed thousands. Warriors from every species. Champions from every world. What makes you think you are different?" Jamin looked up at the giant. His heart was pounding, but his voice was steady. "I do not think I am different," he said. "I know I am different, because I am still here." Vorn laughed. "You are here because of luck, because of tricks, because others fell before you could. But there are no tricks here, human. No machines to help you. No allies to hide behind. Just you and me." He raised his massive fists. "Let us see what you are truly made of." The horn sounded. The battle began. Vorn moved faster than something his size should be able to move. His fist came down like a hammer, and Jamin barely dove out of the way. The impact left a crater in the sand. Jamin rolled to his feet and ran. There was no strategy here, no clever plan. He just had to survive. Vorn chased him across the arena, each step shaking the ground. His attacks were devastating. Punches that could crush stone, kicks that could break bones. Jamin dodged and weaved, using his smaller size to stay ahead. But he could not dodge forever. Backhand caught him across the chest and sent him flying. He crashed into the arena wall and fell to the sand, gasping for air. Pain exploded through his body. He felt something crack in his ribs. The crowd cheered. This was what they had come to see. Jamin forced himself to his feet. His vision was blurry. His legs were shaking. But he stood. Vorn looked at him with something like surprise. "You should stay down," the champion said. It would be easier. I do not do easy, Jamin replied. He charged Dot. It was a foolish attack. He knew it was foolish. But he had to try something. Vorn caught him easily, lifting him off the ground by the throat. Jamin kicked and struggled, but it was useless. The champion was too strong. Do you yield? Vorn asked. J-Min could barely breathe. His vision was going dark, but he thought of Kira dying in his arms. He thought of Yuna waiting for him at home. He thought of Velaria watching from above. Never, he gasped. Vorn threw him across the arena. Jimin hit the ground and rolled, leaving a trail of blood in the white sand. Every bone in his body screamed in pain, but he got up again. The crowd fell silent. This was not normal. No one had ever lasted this long against Vorn. No one had ever gotten up this many times. Vorn attacked again, and again, and again. Each blow was harder than the last. Jamin's body was breaking. His arm hung limp at his side. Blood ran from a dozen wounds. He could barely see through the swelling on his face, but every time he fell, he got back up. Stay down. Vorn roared, frustration creeping into his voice. Why will you not stay down? Jamin stood on shaking legs. He coughed blood onto the sand. Because humans do not quit, he said. Because we have been told our whole lives that we are weak, that we are worthless, that we do not matter. And every time someone tells us to give up, we prove them wrong. He raised his fists. They were broken, barely able to form a proper shape. But he raised them anyway. So come on, he said. Hit me again. I will still be standing when you are too tired to swing. Vorn hesitated. For the first time in 10,000 battles, he hesitated because he saw something in the human's eyes that he had never seen before. Not fear, not anger, not even hope. It was certainty. The absolute certainty that he would not be broken. In her viewing box, Velaria was crying. She did not even notice the tears running down her silver cheeks. She had never cried before. She had not known she could, but watching this human, this small, fragile, impossible human, refuse to fall. Something inside her shattered and rebuilt itself into something new. End it, she whispered. Please. I cannot watch him die. But she could not look away. In the arena, Vorn gathered himself for one final attack. This would be the killing blow. He would end this stubborn creature once and for all. He charged forward with all his strength. J-Min did not try to dodge. He did not try to run. He stood his ground and watched the champion coming. At the last moment, he moved. It was not a dodge. It was a step forward. He ducked under Vorn's massive fist and threw everything he had into a single punch. It was not a powerful punch. It would not have hurt any of the other contestants in the trials. But it hit Vorn right on the chin, in exactly the right spot. And the champion's head snapped. Back. Blood flew from Vorn's lip. For the first time in 10,000 battles, the undefeated champion was bleeding. The crowd gasped, then fell silent. Then erupted into chaos. Vorn staggered back, touching his lip in disbelief. He looked at the blood on his fingers, then at the broken human standing before him. How? He whispered. Jamin smiled through his broken face. I told you, he said. I am still here. Velaria was on her feet. Her heart was pounding so hard, she thought it might break free from her chest. She made a decision. Enough! Her voice echoed through the arena, silencing every other sound. All eyes turned to the viewing box where the High Commander stood, her silver skin glowing with power. The trial is over, she declared. The human has proven himself. Vorn looked up at her in confusion. Commander, I can still fight. I said enough. Velaria's voice left no room for argument. He drew your blood. No one has ever drawn your blood. The trial was to prove worth, not to kill. He has proven his worth beyond any doubt. She looked down at Jae-min. Bleeding and broken but still standing in the sand, their eyes met across the vast distance, and she smiled. The human wins. The arena exploded into noise. Beings who had laughed at Jae-min now chanted his name. Those who had called humans weak now stared in wonder. Jae-min stood alone in the center of the arena, barely conscious. Blood dripping from every part of his body. But he was standing, and he had one dot as the medical teams rushed to help him. As the crowd continued to roar, as history was made in the floating coliseum among the stars, Jae-min looked up at Velaria one last time. He smiled, and finally let himself fall. The Grand Ceremony Hall was the most beautiful place in the known galaxy. It floated at the heart of the Orivan Empire. A structure made of crystal and light that seemed to exist partly in normal space and partly somewhere else entirely. The walls shifted and changed colors as you watched them. The ceiling showed not just stars, but entire galaxies spinning slowly in an endless dance. Representatives from 100 worlds filled the hall. Leaders, ambassadors, and dignitaries from every major civilization had come to witness this moment. Cameras broadcast the ceremony to trillions of beings across the galaxy. And at the center of it all stood Han Jae-min. He had spent a week in the medical bay after the battle with Vorn. Doctors, using technology far beyond anything on Earth, had healed his broken bones, repaired his damaged organs, and erased the scars from his body. He looked the same as he had before the trials began, but inside, he was a different person. He wore a formal uniform that the Oravani had made for him. It was simple but elegant, black fabric with silver lines that caught the light. He felt strange wearing it. He was still just an engineer from Seoul. He still did not feel like a hero. But the galaxy saw him differently now. The doors at the far end of the hall opened, and Velaria entered. She wore armor again, but not the battle armor she had worn during the trials. This was ceremonial, white metal that flowed like water, with a cape of silver that trailed behind her. She wore a crown of light on her head, marking her as High Commander of the Empire. She was the most powerful person in the galaxy. And she was looking only at him. Velaria walked through the hall with slow, measured steps. The crowd parted before her, bowing their heads in respect. But she did not look at any of them. Her violet eyes were fixed on the human standing at the center of the room. When she reached him, she stopped. The hall fell completely silent. Even the lights seemed to hold their breath. Han Jae-min of Earth, Velaria said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. You came to the proving grounds as a replacement, a backup. You were dismissed by many as unworthy, including by me. She paused. Her expression softened. We were all wrong. She gestured, and attendants brought forward a pedestal covered in cloth. When the cloth was removed, Jae-min saw what lay beneath, a metal made of a metal that seemed to hold starlight inside it. A scroll written in the ancient language of the Orivan, and a small device that glowed with power. These are the rewards you have earned, Velaria said. The Medal of Ascension, marking you as a champion of the Proving Grounds. The Treaty of Alliance, binding the Orivan Empire to protect and support humanity for the next 10,000 years. And the Genesis Core, a device containing technology that will advance your species by 1,000 years. She picked up the medal and stepped closer to him. Bow your head, she said. Softly. Jae-min bowed his head, and Velaria placed the medal around his neck. The metal was warm against his chest, pulsing gently with energy. Then she leaned close. Her lips almost touched his ear. I should have taken you first, she whispered. On that day on Earth, when I chose others and dismissed you, I made the greatest mistake of my life. I looked at you and saw nothing. Now I look at you and see everything. Jamin's heart was pounding. He could feel her breath on his skin, could smell the scent of starlight and flowers. I have waited 500 years, she continued. I am done waiting. She pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. The galaxy is watching. The treaty is signed. Your people are safe. You have done everything you promised. She paused. Now I am asking you, not as the High Commander, but as Valaria, to stay. Stay here, with me. Jamin looked at her. He saw the vulnerability behind her power, the loneliness behind her beauty, the hope behind her pride. He thought of Earth, of Yuna, of the life he had left behind. Then he thought of the journey that had brought him here, the pain, the sacrifice, the impossible odds he had overcome. And he thought of this alien woman who had started by despising him and now loved him. My sister is on Earth, he said quietly. I cannot abandon her. Valaria's face flickered with pain, but she nodded. Of course. I understand. Family is. I was not finished, Jamin said. She stopped. I cannot abandon her, he continued. So I will bring her here. She always wanted to see the stars. I think she would like it. Valaria stared at him. You mean, yes. Jamin smiled. I will stay. Not because I won the trials. Not because of duty or obligation. I will stay because somewhere between being dismissed as worthless and being crowned as a champion, I fell in love with you too. The hall was silent. 100 worlds were watching. Trillions of beings held their breath. Then Valaria, High Commander of the Arivon Empire, the most powerful woman in the galaxy, did something no one had ever seen her do. She grabbed Jamin's face and kissed him. The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Some gasped. Some did not understand what was happening at all. But it did not matter, because in that moment, standing in the grand ceremony hall surrounded by the light of 1,000 stars, two beings from opposite ends of the galaxy chose each other. When the kiss finally ended, Valaria rested her forehead against his. You know, this will change everything, she said. Humanity will be bound to the Empire. Our species will merge. Nothing will ever be the same. Good, Jamin said. I was getting bored of the same. She laughed, a real laugh, bright and joyful. It was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. The ceremony continued. Speeches were made. Treaties were signed. History was written. But Jamin barely noticed any of it. He stood beside Valaria, her hand in his, and watched as his species' place in the galaxy changed forever. Later that night, when the ceremony was over and the guests had departed, Jamin stood alone on a balcony overlooking the stars. Valaria joined him, no longer in her armor but in the simple white robe she had worn the first night they talked. What are you thinking about? She asked. Kira, he said. I wish she could have seen this. Valaria nodded. She would be proud of you. I hope so. He paused. She made me promise to show the galaxy what humans are made of. I think I kept that promise. Valaria wrapped her arm around him, leaning her head on his shoulder. You did more than that, she said. You showed me what humans are made of. And in doing so, you saved my people. She looked up at him. We were dying, Jamin, slowly fading into nothing. But you gave us hope again. You gave us a future. Jamin held her close, looking out at the infinite stars. Then we saved each other, he said, and in the silence of space, surrounded by the light of 1 billion suns, they watched the future unfold together. On Earth, the news of Jamin's victory spread like fire. Humanity celebrated their new place among the stars. Technology began to transform societies. Yuna received a message from her brother, promising that he would bring her to see the galaxy and across the universe. Species that had once dismissed humans as weak and worthless now spoke of them with respect. because they had learned what Velaria had learned, what Vorn had learned, what the entire galaxy now knew. The most dangerous thing in the universe was not the strongest species. It was not the smartest or the fastest or the most advanced thought. It was the species that refused to break. The species that kept standing, no matter how many times it was knocked down. The species that looked at impossible odds and said, "I will find a way." Humanity, and among all the humans in the galaxy, none stood taller than Han Jae-min, the engineer who had been dismissed as filler, who had proved that worth was not measured in strength or genetics, but in the simple, stubborn refusal to give up. The end.